Hello here and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Rob Washett, Steve Sipple. Let's try it again, gentlemen. We are not only live on all of our great affiliates, statewide radio, and the podcast channels for Husker Online, but you can watch us on the Husker Online YouTube channel as well, as many of you did last week, and we enjoyed the comments. And no, that's not Robert Redford over there. That is Steve Sipple. If you got confused.
Striking resemblance.
Yeah, all it is a nose thing. I mean, if I got a nose job, it would be Robert Redford. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I can see it.
I mean, I got a big nose.
But let's get into the show. 1 week away, National Signing Day. Nebraska continues to add to this roster. They're pushing 37 players right now, scholarship players added to the football team. Very good chance they can get to 38 here by signing day, if not more. I think we all had an idea of what this was going to look like under Matt Rhule in terms of just the players that he was going to add to this team. But it's been even greater. I mean, you look at the numbers today, they're at 26 commits and then 11 transfers today. That's 37 players. A year ago, they were at 34. That was the record at Nebraska. Bill Callahan's transition class year of 2005 was 32.
Okay.
And that was back in the days of the 25 cap, and you had to do the count backs and whatnot to get to that number. So
annual cap.
The annual cap, but you could count back. So if you had 7 you didn't use the year before, you could count them next year. So for Callahan to get 32 in that era was unheard of. But now here we are at 37, probably going to need a 38. With Sua Lafatu, who's going to make his announcement on signing day. He announced, Brian Munson and him talked on Tuesday night. He'll announce next week on Wednesday. That would be 38 guys added to this football team, Steve Sipple.
38 guys. Yeah. I have not honestly pondered the big picture too much because you're so wrapped up in the kind of the guy by guy he committed. I think as the days go on, I'll look at it more in a big picture sense. It is striking the amount of work they're doing. It's striking to me. It's striking to me something you said, Sean. By the way, great numbers for context. I mean, that was really important. Something you said, I heard you on the radio this week say, of the incoming freshmen, probably only a couple look like contributors. So it's odd, we always talk about this roster flip. I don't see this as a roster flip. There's too many guys.
It's a long-term play.
It's a long-term play. Yeah, long-term play.
Laying the foundation. Yeah. And Sean, I don't know if you've been asked yet today, but how are they going to get down to 85? I just want to make sure that you had to answer that.
What happens if they don't?
Okay.
There's not even an NCAA anymore.
Is there? On the YouTube screen, we need to have like a little Roman numeral thing that just tracks the times that we talk about getting to 85. That's number one on the side there.
There's this sort of built-in part of the discussion that Nebraska would be in big trouble if they did. I guess the NCAAs.
You know how they get down to 85? They call up 1890 and Tom Peed and say, "Hey, we got a few guys that we got to put on
a few extra scholarships."
But honestly, that's maybe one way.
Guys, that's what they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Trent Hickson was a walk-on last year. Brody Belt was a walk-on. Wyatt Lever was a walk-on. Colton Feast was a walk-on.
Wow.
The long snappers. They put those guys all on walk-on situations, down the road in the program. So NIL has changed this. The thing is, they're not going to be very public about that. They're not going to say, and the way we got down to 85 is thanks to our great collective. They're not going to do that. But that's
part of it.
That's part of it. It's a strategy you have to utilize.
Some guys will just matriculate after spring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There might be an injury.
There's a whole nother round of attrition coming. Yeah. I mean, that's how it always happens. There's the right after the season, there's right after spring ball, and then there's right before fall camp where you get more roster movement. It always figures itself out. So I just tongue in cheek asked you that. But what I do want to discuss is with all these additions, wide receiver has now taken the cake as the most surprising development, in my opinion, just with the sheer numbers that they've added to that room. Obviously most recently getting Demetrius Bell, but I mean, just that the work that they've done at that position group, which is the irony here is how much fretting was going on with McGuire taking over as receivers coach. And now all of a sudden that looks like maybe one of the deepest units on the entire team. What do you guys think about the additions, and where do they go forward from here?
I just want you to chew on this, Steve Sipple. They're at 16 wide receivers on scholarship
16.
right now. That's more scholarship players than John Cook has on his volleyball team, than Amy Williams has on her basketball team, than Rhonda Ravel has on her softball team, than Will Bolt has on his baseball team. They got 16 wide receivers on scholarship. Think about that.
That's wild.
Well, I mean, and they'll probably play 9, 10. It makes some sense. There are a lot of young guys in there. I mean, how many of those is it? 6 incoming freshmen? Is that the number?
6 freshmen.
Yeah, 6 incoming freshmen. So
2
not all
transfers.
Yeah,
2 guys coming back from the portal.
Yeah. I mean, the question is who's number 1? I mean, who's your clear? I don't know that you can say who their clear cut number 1 is.
My money's on Billy Kemp today.
I think of that as an unconventional number 1, and that he's 5'9", 172. And now I will say this: Virginia didn't just play him in the slot; they played him all over.
Yeah,
I mean, they lined him up in the backfield. I don't know. You guys we all think about football in different ways. And when I think of a number 1, I think of a 6'3",
Kenny Bell,
210-pounder, 195-pounder. I think of Xavier Betts. Ideally, Betts would say, "Okay, this is it now. I'm making a push for the NFL," and Betts would become your number 1. That's what the idea.
I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself, though, not knowing the mental and the physical shape that he's going to be in.
I understand where you're
Marcus Washington's going to be in that discussion as well.
Right. He's not. I mean, he's good. I like him. He had 31 catches. He had 31 catches last year. He's a number 2 in my mind, though.
Okay.
I mean, Palmer's number 1. Palmer's a number 1. Samori Touré a number 1. I don't know if Washington would get you the kind of numbers that you would need to classify him as number 1. Maybe. I like him. Don't get me wrong. I like him because he's tough. Doesn't drop anything. And
it's hard to be number 1.
We'll go over middle. But, yeah, I mean, I think when he just doesn't fit the prototype number 1. Neither does Kemp. But somebody's got to be.
Any of them? I mean,
somebody's – no, somebody's got to be number 1, though. You're right. I just wish it was Betts.
Billy Kemp, though, has the reception numbers and the targets of a number 1 in his career.
Yeah.
You got to admit that.
Oh, I know. He's interesting. I watched his film. He's interesting. They use him in a lot of ways. You don't often see him just run a go route, though, and catch the ball over a 6'2" corner. You don't see that all that often. But you see him used in a variety of ways. I mean, and they will, they'll throw it over the middle of the field to him when they need a first down. They'll throw those little flare out screens and make him beat one guy and get upfield. He's good catch. He's a good catch and run guy. So yeah, he's going to catch a lot of passes. There's no doubt about that.
This week, Nebraska, though, going on the subject of new roster additions, there were 4 of them. Art Gilbert, obviously late last week, but this week, Ishmael Smith-Flores, the tight end out of Arlington Martin, his teammate, Jeremiah Charles out of Arlington Martin, Jacob Hood, the 3rd Georgia Bulldog, transferring to Nebraska, big 6'8" tackle, then Demetrius Bell, a Nashville wide receiver. All 4 of those are the latest additions. How about the Corn Dogs? Remember Mark Richt when his family was in Bellevue and they had the nickname for being Georgia Bulldogs in Nebraska? They called themselves the Corn Dogs. And the Corn Dogs are back.
They're already selling shirts. You can buy a Corn Dog shirt.
Yeah, all those guys are.
Where's your shirt, Rob?
I didn't wear mine today.
Are intriguing in their own way. Jacob Hood, I've seen some people kind of pencil him as a starting left tackle. That's a big development. He's only played 1 season of college football. He never played. He redshirted. His next snap in a college game will be his first one. His size is alluring. I mean, he's a project, I think.
Is that his playing weight, you think?
360.
Yeah, I'm saying, is that? I mean, does he have work to do?
I don't know. Just what I've seen.
Is this basically Jalen Weaver again?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, it's hard to play at that weight and move.
You're right. I think he probably 340. His body looks pretty good. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't necessarily look at him as a transfer that's got to come in and play right away. I know that's what you do, but he's a young guy. He's a young transfer. The other ones they're fascinating. The tight end from Georgia's obviously, man. I mean, watch him. He's awesomely talented. He was the highest ranked tight end since the ratings began, right? And then the pass rusher, the critical thing with him will be as he regained the explosion, all of his explosion from a knee injury suffered in high school. That's what like scouts wonder. That's what those coaches down south wonder. Is he going to ever regain that explosiveness?
You're listening here to the Husker Online show as we make our way through opening headlines. Matt Rhule is everywhere. I was just on my regular personal Facebook feed, and just people I know in Omaha had pictures of him everywhere. He was at Brother Sebastian's restaurant.
Really?
He was in all these different Omaha high schools, including my alma mater, Omaha Gross, go Cougars, Bellevue East, Bellevue West, Papillion La Vista South. Over there? Wow. My uncle's nephew, his wife's a principal or assistant principal at Papillion South, and Matt Rhule retweeted a picture with Jessica Prussia, my Uncle Dan's nephew's wife, at Papillion South. And then he was at Stella's Hamburgers. Remember, I took you to Stella's.
Yeah, Stella's good. What's Brother Sebastian?
It's a steak. It's an old school Omaha steakhouse.
Where's that at?
It's off of Pacific Street, I believe,
and
in West Omaha.
Oh, West Omaha.
Yeah. Gary Saddlemeyer had been a long time spokesman for them over the years. He was kind of always done their commercials, but he was in there for a lunch on Monday. He was hitting slap shots at Baxter Arena with Trev Alberts.
Sounds like he's got a fun job to me.
I mean, right now he is in the full kind of wedding reception stage of the job.
What do you think about not just Rhule, but the staff and the efforts that they've made in literally going to what seems like every high school in the state, every small town in the state, with all these things that they need to do on the recruiting front, the transfer portal, all that sort of stuff, that they're devoting this much time, effort, resources to getting out and making their presence in the state, putting stickers on high school walls and taking pictures with coaches, with athletic directors, going to small town restaurants, basically ingraining themselves in the state. I mean, obviously that was a priority for them, but is it surprising just how much of an effort they've made in that regard?
Well, Trev said last night, Trev Alberts on the AD on radio, statewide radio, that the staff's work ethic has surpassed his expectations. I don't take it for granted. And if I were a Nebraska fan, I wouldn't take it for granted. I think they're just working incredible hours. And as you said earlier, Rob, and it kind of goes along with laying a foundation. That's what they're doing in a sense. I mean, you're building those relationships right off the bat. I like it. I mean, it's a very good look.
What it shows me, I mean, because people ask why didn't Frost go out to this level? He kind of did, but he didn't want to be seen in public. He didn't want to take a lot of pictures with people and do some of the things that you're seeing, Ed Foley's doing on Twitter. His personality was different. Bo Pelini's personality was different. Mike Riley,
he liked doing that stuff.
But just didn't go at that level. I mean, the satellite camp tour that Mike Riley went on was intense because I went on every one of those trips. I was gone for 9 straight days.
Yeah, Riley was good about getting out.
Yeah, I mean, he was
comfortable.
He did a lot of that too. But this is just common sense, understanding.
It is, but it's complicated. I think it's complicated by personality. It begs a question I would ask you guys. If you're an AD, now I will tell you, I'll just put it this way. If I were a Nebraska AD, because of the nature of this job, I would lean toward hiring guys that are comfortable in public. And if you're not, and that's clear, it can't be the only determining factor, but it would be a factor.
You can't hide here.
I mean,
you're the most high profile person in the state. And if you're uncomfortable being recognized and people want to talk to you and take pictures, maybe this isn't the job for you.
That's right.
Go coach at some.
Well, I'll give you an example. I mean, when Pelini, he looked at the Miami job. You guys remember that when he looked at the Miami job, and a lot of the appeal was, I can go to Miami and not be recognized.
I mean, that's what Frost loved about UCF. He'd go to the store, no one had any idea who he was. He was just a regular guy in Orlando.
Right. In defense of Frost, I mean, I remember talking to him about it before he took the job. That was one of his big concerns was, I don't really feel comfortable in all that limelight.
And it ended up being kind of a detriment to him in the end.
Yeah,
it did.
It did. Now,
because as the pressure grew, he got more isolated.
And that's the question as an AD you have to wrestle with. Is it a detriment at Nebraska?
I think it is.
Yeah, I believe it is too.
Because it's that important.
Right.
So what do you do?
There's some places where you can be an introvert
No
head
doubt.
coach and
No
be
doubt.
pretty fine.
You can't do it here.
You got to take it on. And I think having Ed Foley out there in person has been big. And I was with one of my friends who used to be a Bellevue West coach. He's now a middle school administrator in Bellevue. And he said, Foley's the perfect guy
Really?
to have out doing this because he's older. He's been around the block. Like you can tell he genuinely enjoys going to these places. Like, and no, like I'm not going to name names, but like a younger coach. If you're like a 28 or 32-year-old assistant, you probably aren't going to appreciate it maybe to the level like a guy like Foley is. So I think Foley is probably the perfect guy to have out in this role
Because he's focused on a state.
Yeah. And you worry about Nebraska. You're a special teams coach.
Mhm.
You know, you worry about Nebraska. This is perfect for you. And then
Well,
everybody else will come in around you.
Well, one reason is because you can load your special teams with walk-ons.
Mhm.
I mean, those guys that run down on kickoff coverage. I mean, you can have 28 walk-ons ready to roll. You can be 5 deep. You know, that's important.
All right. When we come back, we're going to shift our focus to Texas. Texas is back on the Nebraska roster. I'm going to share you some very interesting numbers about Nebraska and the state of Texas next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Before I get to talking some Texas numbers on Nebraska, this segment of the show is brought to you by Tanner's Sports Bar and Grill. 30th and Yankee Hill Road. I stopped in there, had friends in town from Omaha on Saturday. Matt and Randy and their wives and Lisa and we stopped in there, caught the tail end of the evening playoff game.
Oh,
and I won't get into those details, Robin Wash.
God, Rob.
That's all right. You watch more of it than I did.
But
Why'd you have to bring that up?
Yeah, no
place
kidding.
is buzzing. Lots
We're
of
having a
people in
good
there
show.
watching.
How's that Mahomes ankle doing?
Just fine as we
No,
play
it's
our
not.
fifth straight.
He's got a high ankle sprain,
Yeah, I mean,
Sean.
Woo,
Watch
sitting
him.
duck.
Watch him try to move in the pocket.
The Tanner's Sports Bar and Grill, 30th and Yankee Hill Road. Great wings. Get in there for all the football action this weekend, all the Nebraska basketball, men's and women's games. That's a great place to go watch games. But let's talk Texas. These numbers really, and I'm a numbers nerd, as you guys know. I
love your
dive
numbers.
into the data. And it's no secret. Texas had kind of fallen off Nebraska since they had joined the Big Ten. And really, there hadn't been much of a geographical identity. They've tried Florida. They've tried California. They towed in Georgia. They've gone in Ohio, but nothing that's ever been just like a full commit. And now it feels like Texas is back. And I think these numbers really back it up. With 6 recruits right now in the class of 2023, this is the most members from the state of Texas Nebraska has had since joining the Big Ten in 2011. And it's the most they've signed since 2008, when they signed 8 from that year. And in 2000, so you go back and study the numbers from 2007 to 2009, Nebraska averaged 8 players from Texas per class. Guys like Rex Burkhead, you go down the line. They got a lot of great players from Texas. They're kind of trending back to that 6 to 8 kids from Texas per year.
Who else? Can you off the top? I know you hate it when I do
Aaron
this.
Green.
Aaron Green would have been another one.
He's good.
Five-star.
Good one.
I mean, there were a lot of guys, the Osborne twins.
Good one. Good one.
And that was the 08 class when they came.
Lakeven Smith was
Georgia.
Oh yeah, you're right. He's from Georgia. All right. Well, anyway, yeah. In Rhule, in busting with the boys, explained why they're doing it in part. Sean, why?
I thought it was fascinating, and this makes a lot of sense. You look at college football, the way the game has changed with conference realignment, and it changed with Nebraska. It changed for Nebraska, but it's going to change even more going forward when Texas and Oklahoma leave the Big 12 to go to the SEC. Then Cincinnati, BYU, Central Florida, those programs will join the Big 12 conference. And that really changes everything in that league now moving forward, because it's not a geographical car league around Texas, like other than obviously West Virginia. But, families in the Big 12 are like, hey, we can get to all of our kids' games. It's going to change in that league now forever. So leagues like the SEC and the Big Ten, I think they've got a great opportunity, especially with the NIL and the financial resources that this league is going to offer over the other leagues.
Do you think this is a surprise? I mean, like this, we should have expected this, just given the connections Matt Rhule and the staff have in Texas, and then obviously hiring Bob Wager. I mean, that was an instant pipeline there.
Garrett McGuire.
And so like, I mean, like this all kind of set up for this to happen. Like with like, I mean, I don't think it should be a surprise that Texas was the emphasis state for this staff that it's already become. But looking ahead, I mean, do you think that this is something that like this is every year you expect these types of numbers to where like you're looking at
6 or more a
six
year?
or more?
I don't know about 6 or more, but it's because of what you just said. I do. I mean, these guys have connections. Here's why it makes sense. I mean, you guys you've covered recruiting. You talk to coaches. It can lead to a more streamlined process. It can be much more efficient if you have guys in Texas that and you can call a guy at a high school and say, "Hey, that running back looks good," and that coach that you trust, that you've dealt with for years, says, "Get him, just do it. Yeah, he can play, and you'll have no problems." You know how much time that can save if you have guys that you can just go to. And it's one phone call and they say, "Do it, just do it. Trust me." That can save a lot of time.
Well,
that's one thing we're talking about.
Well, and Jeremiah Charles and Ishmael Smith Flores are a perfect example of that to a different level. But do you think Bob Wager doesn't know like what kind of players they are?
Absolutely.
Do you think Bob Wager is going to like take bad players on his first Power 5?
No, absolutely not. You're right, Sean. You're right. I mean, that he knows those kids. He knows he knows how they can play, but he also knows their personality. They're reliable. Are they reliable kids? Yeah, he knows. And by the way, I watched Ishmael Smith Flores. I mean, you watch him, and it's almost startling that that's his first year of football. He didn't play it until a week before football of his senior year. That's when he decided to go out. He looks like a guy that's played it his whole life. I mean, he's clearly a natural athlete, and he's clearly a natural pass catcher, and he's really good with absorbing contact. I mean, it's like, yeah, you'd never guess he was just a basketball player.
Isn't it funny? And Robin, you're a basketball guy, but there's so many kids that want to play basketball growing up. It's fun. It's easy. You travel.
It's easier than football.
You do all these cool sponsored shoe events everywhere. But there's a lot of 6'2" type kids. And then all of a sudden they say, "I'm going to play football." And then they go Power 5. I mean, it's crazy.
Athletes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There's certain positions and certain body types that just translate perfectly with basketball. And then now the modern era of football. I mean, you start like way back in the day with like Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez, those types. But now it's like frequent where you're seeing basketball players that, kind of tap out on that end and decide to give football a crack, and they turn out that their skill set, their athleticism fits perfectly to that sport. And I think there's more crossover than ever between basketball skills and football skills, just with the way football has kind of shifted to more, it's less of the trenches.
Basketball on grass.
Exactly. Especially with some of the modern offenses.
Yeah. So Ishmael Smith Flores is a really good example because he's 6'5". Now he's 6'5". That's good. That's good in high school. He's a forward, right? 6'5" forward in college.
Nope.
Maybe not long enough now.
Time a dozen.
Yeah. You better maybe look at football at 6'5". And he did. And I invite you to watch his film and tell me if that looks like a first-year football player. I can see now he'll have a ways to go compared to some of the guys, but other guys have played it for a long time. But I mean, you can see the raw talent.
Well, Jeremiah Charles too. I mean, 40-inch vertical.
Oh.
4 or 5. He said he had 5 in the game that Rhule's at. I read 4 is what I heard from somebody else on the game that Rhule went to. But he's gone 47-4 in a triple jump as a junior, and he's pushed 50 in practice, he said. But I was talking to somebody affiliated with the Nebraska track program, and they said that 47-4, would get in that area, would get you in contention to score points in the Big 12 or in the Big 10 in track. So he's a dynamic athlete. He wants to do track too.
Yeah.
And so you got several guys, Bryce Turner, Malachi Coleman, that are all going to take part in the track. Joshua Fleeks, Brian Munson had a great breakdown of these numbers today in his 3 and Out column on HuskerOnline, just with the track and what some of these guys are going to bring to the table. And Malachi Coleman ran 10.46, Jalen Lloyd 10.43, Bryce Turner 10.25, Joshua Fleeks 10.46, and then you bring in now somebody like Jeremiah Charles, who's gone 47.4 in high school in a meet in the triple jump.
Bryce Turner's gone 10.25.
Yeah, he's the fastest in the country.
Oh boy, that's Palmer. That's who's that guy they just had? Trey, yeah.
Like
Trey Palmer. That's
Bryce Turner has a chance to win state Texas this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's second last year in the overall state.
Yeah, that's a guy you'd like if he can play football at all.
Well, he had decent. I mean, he did.
Yeah.
But that's the Evan Cooper kind of formula that he goes with. I mean, and Matt Rhule believes in Evan Cooper and the way that he kind of builds off those types of variables.
You could see, I mean, that Trey Palmer speed. I mean, it was really noticeable. I mean, what he was able to do against certain teams, Purdue and Iowa come to mind. I mean, I'll always remember Whipple saying that whole game plan at Iowa was built around Palmer being able to beat them deep. Man, I mean, your whole game plan is built around beating a team like Iowa deep, which doesn't allow the deep ball. It's pretty amazing.
They prevent the deep ball as well as any team in the country more often than not.
But that's how fast that. I mean, you got a 10-2 guy. You got a couple of them. It can really be a problem.
They got a 4x1 team.
Yeah.
I mean, they really do when you break down.
That's sort of exciting. But here's the thing.
Yeah, I know.
We haven't mentioned, we don't talk about it enough, by the way. They haven't gotten the big guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't gotten the big guys on the line. They haven't gotten them on the offensive line. We don't talk about it enough. I got to write about it.
And then finally, guys, I do want to hit on this. Trev Alberts shared on his show, Nebraska will stick with morning practices. And that's what the football, it's not Trev, that's what the football program wants to do. Does that do anything for, I mean,
do fans care about that?
I don't know. But
I don't think so.
Yeah.
They don't. Yeah.
I think they maybe do a little, but.
Well, I think there was some thought
anybody.
that they were going to go back to the old style. Frost pushed for the mornings. He got him. Riley wanted the mornings. He couldn't get them. And Frost said, I'm not coming here without the mornings. And they figured it out.
Riley wanted the mornings.
Yeah. And they said, it's not feasible. And Frost said,
class-wise.
Yeah. And Frost said, well, if we can't do it, I'm not coming here. That was like a kind of a negotiable thing at that time. So they're going to stick with the morning at that, as far as what they do. And it'll be interesting to hear from Matt Rhule more about it. We don't know the spring schedule yet, but we assume they start the week of March 20th.
I got to say, Sean, I mean, I was a little surprised when Trev said that last night, that they would go. He said that times may not be exactly the same, but they're going to go morning practices.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when Frost got here and they laid out why they moved to mornings, it made a lot of sense. Like it basically gets you on a routine. It keeps you from staying up late. I mean, it kind of focus your football right out of the gates to start the day, as opposed to going to class, eating snacks or whatever it may be, sleeping in. So, I mean, it makes you start your day ready to go at 6 or 7 a.m., which I think for a lot of guys, that's a good thing.
Oh, if I was a player, that's what I'd want.
That structure is a good thing.
Yeah.
People are like, well, how are they going to go to class? That's not a problem. You find classes that fit around your football schedule. Like that's not an issue. So for me, I mean,
that's what I'd want. I want morning.
Selfishly, I think it's great. Those nights of staying there till 7 o'clock at night, waiting for guys to come out of the locker room. Yeah, I could stay away from those forever.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about Nebraska basketball. Fred Hoiberg and his team have gone just through a laundry list of injuries. And they've got more things to figure out here as they continue down this brutal stretch. We're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett talking Nebraska basketball. And it's been an unfortunate run of injuries this week as Robin, another major player, arguably two of Nebraska's now 5 best players, out for the season with injuries. And they've just had incredibly bad luck, but this team continues to play hard for Fred Hoiberg. And I think it's really, painted a good picture, at least for Hoiberg, the way they've adjusted and played at times this season.
Yeah. I mean, you compare this product to the one last January that we were watching, where it was just non-competitive. Fans were just disgruntled about just how ugly and at times selfish the play was on the court. This is a completely different story. And you really have to tip your cap to Fred Hoiberg for, going completely against the grain of what he has done since he became a coach. And that was always offense, pace, go out there 5 out, do the NBA style. He completely restructured everything. He brought in different minded coaches. He recruited different types of players and did a complete re-emphasis on what this program is going to be about. And it's worked. I mean, as far as being able to be a consistently competitive team in the Big Ten, the brand of basketball they're playing right now is far more suited to do that than what they were playing. And I think the fans have noticed that. Every fan that I've talked to, they like this team. And that was one of the things that Fred says. He says, you're going to like this team. And they do. Now, they're not the most talented. They have severe limitations offensively, especially now with the injuries. But the effort and the work they put in defensively, the commitment to rebounding, and all those things that had been drastically lacking over the last 3 years, those have all significantly improved. And they're already at 10 wins. Get, a couple more, and it's going to be the best record Fred has had here. So, I mean, it's minimal progress, but it's progress. And I think when you take the big picture conversation of just how different this looks compared to what they've been able to do through the first 20 games or 21 games, I think that for me ends the conversation about them doing anything with Fred and not bringing him back for another year.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned you like what you see. Fans like what they see. Most importantly, the boss seems to like it.
Mm-hmm.
Trev Alberts. He mentions it. Well, anytime he talks about Nebraska basketball now, he mentions how he likes that style. He likes the players that Fred. He really liked Bandamel and Gary. Likes them. I shouldn't talk about them.
Black shirts
past. They're injured, but he really liked those guys. And he likes the boss likes the way they play. He should.
Yeah.
I mean, I you know what? I had a hard time watching games last year.
You and a lot of people.
Yeah, I did.
It was not an enjoyable product.
Robin,
No, it was like I was doing my taxes. I was like, I got to do this.
That afternoon Wisconsin game was brutal.
Well, the afternoon Northwestern game was brutal when they're down 35 on their home court.
Oh, that one
I stood and watched it.
I blocked that one out of my memory. Yeah,
That was a home game.
It was a home game. It was a home game. I stood watching it. The only thing I've stood and watched in the last 25 years, because I was utterly amazed, was Beavis and Butthead. But and I was. I mean, the first time I saw, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. I mean, this is incredible art. But the Northwestern thing was like, I just can't believe what I'm watching.
Yeah,
they're down to Northwestern by 35 on their home court.
Yeah.
Now this year, I'm ready for the games. I want to watch them. They're pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, so like just go through what they've had to deal with right now. Before the season even starts, they lose maybe their number 2 point guard in Karan McPherson to a season-ending knee injury. Then their best player, Derek Walker, misses the first 5 games with a unknown situation. Sam Griesel misses 2 Big Ten games, one to an illness, one to a hip injury. Blaze Keita has played like a combined 12 minutes over the last 6 or 7 games with a high ankle sprain. Juwan Gary out for the season with a shoulder injury. Emmanuel Bandamel out for the season with a knee injury. I mean, I've covered Nebraska basketball for a long time now, and they've gone through their share of setbacks, but I can't remember a year where just the totality of injuries and missed games, missed minutes has been like this, to where not only are you losing guys, you're losing several. There are 4 guys that they couldn't afford to be without. All 4 of them have missed significant time. They've played 10 games together. Through the first 20, the combination of Derek Walker, Sam Griesel, Juwan Gary, Emmanuel Bandamel have played 10 games from start to finish. Yeah. I mean, for them to be where they are with that, I think says even more to the job that Fred Hoiberg and the staff have done to still be at 500, even with those many setbacks and hurdles to overcome.
And I think you're like me in that I don't expect this team to go away. I mean, you're predicting them to beat tough teams still. I think they'll I think they'll stay in games. You saw it at Penn State after Bandamel went down. You would think, oh God, they're in big trouble. They were, but they played Penn State tough. You know what? A lot of it is guys like Tominaga, Denham Dawson, Jamarcus Lawrence. Those guys have stepped up, particularly Tominaga. Sometimes I wonder if he gets enough credit for the way he's expanded his game. He's not just a standstill outside shooter anymore. Cuts well to the basket, cuts to the basket without the ball, goes to the basket with the ball. I mean, he tries hard on defense. I mean, he's just so small. He gets matchup problems.
He's just got his natural limitations. Yeah. But I mean, for this thing to stay above water and like the schedule's still there. I mean, they still end with a very favorable home slate down the stretch that, I mean, I'm not going to say they're going to make a postseason push here, but at least that opportunity is still there. And if they can get all those other guys you just mentioned to help Derek Walker and help Sam Greasel, they're going to at least have a chance. And, I think for Nebraska fans, it's certainly disappointing thinking about what could have been had this group been able to stay healthy and play the majority of the games together. But despite all of that, this season is already the best one Fred Hoiberg's had. And I think that gives you reason to believe that as long as they can continue down this path, and they're going to have some stuff to replace next year. I mean, you lose 3 of those guys. Gary should be back, but you lose 3 of those 4. So there's going to be a big overhaul in that regard. But I think that we talk about foundation with football and what Matt Rhule is doing. I think this has been a big foundation year for where this is what Nebraska basketball's identity is. And it's something that is successful in the Big Ten.
You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Robin Washut, Steve Sipples. We talk Nebraska basketball. Robin, do you think at some point in SIP as well, do you think at some point Trev Alberts has to come out and just say, like, Fred Hoiberg will be back next year? Like, do you just not even need to say anything and assume people know? I mean, is there a tact or an approach that Trev's got to take here on this? Because he's not really even painted a picture that Fred's on the hot seat right now.
Yeah. I mean, those questions are starting to get asked more, like the radio shows I do and on our weekly chat. People are asking, like, is Fred going to be back? Make your shot. And I'm like, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the last thing that Trev Alberts wants to do is write another $11 million check for a guy not to coach here, especially after what they went through this last offseason. And I think going into this year, it was a deal where as long as Fred didn't force Trev's hand and like make it a no-brainer decision that he had to go, he was going to come back. And I think he's done more than enough. It's not just doing the bare minimum. I think he's done enough to create some optimism coming out of a year where, the fan interest and excitement was about as low as we've seen.
Right. Now, it's only fair to give voice to, let's say, fans who are concerned. I mean, I do hear from people that say, quit backing him, Sipple. I mean, this is ridiculous. They're 12 and 55.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 12 and 55 in a Big Ten. You can't ignore the record.
Nope.
I'm with you, Rob, though. You do see all these changes made, the style of play, the kind of player he brought in, and you think, okay, he can do this, I think.
Yeah.
But you're betting on it because you haven't seen. You're betting on it based on not much.
No.
Right? That's the thing.
More transfers next year that we don't know about.
Although, Rob, in the chat, you made a good point in the chat. We always do this thing where Fred's going to flip his roster again. Kind of. I mean, you got a lot of guys back now, like Denham Dawson's back, Jamarcus Lawrence back, Tominaga, Keita, Wilcher.
Yeah, maybe Wilcher.
Yeah, maybe Wilcher.
I mean, like there's you never know with any of these guys, but the guys that all these injuries, you want to look at a silver lining. A lot of young dudes are playing some significant minutes right now. I mean, Jamarcus Lawrence is playing starter level minutes. And you bring back all these guys that, they're learning on the fly right now. In theory, that should help give you a foundation to build upon going forward.
All right. Follow Robin's work on Husker Online. He is the best in the business at covering Nebraska basketball. I don't know if that's
wow, Sean, just stop right there.
He's also the best ice fisherman in Florida.
Get yourself in trouble over there.
I'm a season ticket holder, by the way, but when we come back,
you eat a lot of popcorn over there, don't you?
Keep that Colby Ridge stand going. When we come back, we'll take your questions in the mailbag. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Welcome back here to the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut, as we're moving you through here 1 week away from National Signing Day. It's time for the mailbag, as each week we take your questions off Twitter, off the Red Sea Scrolls. We bring them in the show. And joining us on the mailbag, got a lot of comments, by the way, Abby, on the introduction for you last week, how cringeworthy it really was. So welcome back again to the Husker Online Show.
One.
What's that?
Another cringeworthy one.
Another cringeworthy. That's my goal.
Keep it rolling
every week. But what do you got to start us out with in the mailbag?
All right, our first one. Besides the quarterback room, where do you see attrition taking place this spring and summer?
Well, I think receiver is a spot where it definitely has to start, right, guys?
Yeah, I mean,
really,
16 guys. That's like an entire baseball team right there. Like, I don't know. I mean, I think just naturally you can't keep 16 guys happy, especially in today's scholarship portal world. So I would imagine there'll be at least some attrition there, right?
Other than that, I don't. Where's the position? What's
inside linebacker?
About quarterback.
Well, there's some guys on the inside linebacker room that haven't really even been talked about. Like if they don't come out of the scrum this year,
QB room.
I'm not going to go through names.
No, you don't. Then people know the names.
But there's a few guys in there. There's some of those guys that they took in the portal last year at defensive back that didn't really factor this year.
Yeah.
And some of those guys, if they don't factor this year, what's the long-term?
Go back to inside backer, though. Okay, so you have Reimer and Henrich, Snodgrass. Now, when you
Taggy.
Yeah. Now, when you get down the line, if those guys leave, you need some inside guys. So you better be ready to go back in the portal. I mean, Chris Kolarevich doesn't grow on trees. I mean, you gotta find that guy.
So
Again,
is MJ Sherman strictly an edge guy?
that's a good question.
Or
Maybe there's somebody you could make an inside.
Could he play
I
inside
don't
too?
know. That's a good question.
I mean, I don't know.
You can't get by with Reimer and Henrich, who have both been injury prone. I mean, they're injury prone. They're smaller guys. They're smaller inside linebackers. Oh, I've talked to one of the coaches about this. Those guys are both small inside linebackers in the Big Ten. The injury thing is always on the coach's mind.
All right, Abby, what do you got next?
How are you feeling about the quality and the depth of the current roster heading into spring? And how have you felt about the rosters in recent years compared at the same time?
I mean, I think there's a lot of good pieces there. They've got 4 quarterbacks, for example, that have started Power 5 games on the roster. I mean, that's a good place to start. They've got all of their running backs, and you go down this group of running backs. 4 of these guys have taken significant Power 5 snaps at running back. They've got enough at receiver. The tight end, as we know, if Gilbert and Fedoni come back, they could be a factor.
If Fedoni comes back and Gilbert's okay.
And then you got the O-line, which that's a huge question. If they had Walter Rouse, I think you'd feel really, really good about this offense right now.
They do have 7 guys with starting experience up front.
And Nuri Nweli, I think, is going to have a bounce back year after his suspension season. So that's one to watch. But the concern, and I think we're on the same page here, Sip, is those 280 plus pound bodies on the defensive front.
Absolutely. Now, that's a concern, but you can't. I mean, they have 10 returning starters on defense. Okay, you're right. I mean, if there's one thing that makes you wonder about the additions to the rosters, they have not added bulk, not enough. I mean, they got the offensive lineman from Georgia. That's good, but they needed Rouse. They needed the kid from Baylor, Micah Mazuka. And they have to add a defensive lineman or 2. I was just looking at it the other day. Or guys like Rucon Buckley got to really step up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that'd be the trenches for me. I think everything else you can talk yourself into looking pretty good.
Yeah.
But both sides of the line, I think, are still incomplete at this point.
Secondary looks good, though.
Secondary, Kenny Wilhite was on my show on the ticket. He thinks both Newsome and Farmer are pros. And you heard the new secondary coach say there's some pros in the room.
Gifford's good.
Gifford's a good player. Yeah, all the guys are back. I mean, their whole secondary's back. Buford's a good player. So, yeah, there's some positions where you look at it and say they're not just acceptable, they're good.
What do you think is going to be the most improved position, and what position needs to be the most improved?
Needs to, for me, is offensive line.
Yeah, I think zero
Gotta be.
question on that.
Anyone on a different page there?
No, same page.
What's going to be?
Running back. If they get any kind of blocking. That's a good group of running backs. I think they were good. I mean, Anthony Grant was good last year. Obviously, A.J. Allen went down against Oklahoma. So early in the year, game 4. Now, the prospect of him coming back, Grant being better, getting a little better blocking, the 2 guys, Ramir Johnson and Gabe Irvin, continuing to come along. Oh, I think you got a running back room.
Emmett Johnson enters the chat.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning him, by the way. I like him. I mean, he's a versatile kid. I think he's a pretty hard-nosed running back.
What about tight end? Like, could that end up being like, okay, Vokalek was really good. How funny is it, though, when you think about tight end at Nebraska? Like, they pushed Jack Stahl kind of out of here. He could have come back another year.
Did they?
Yeah. Well, I talked to his dad at the hotel when they played Iowa. And number one, I think he was a little burned that he wasn't a captain.
Okay.
Like, he was a leader of that team and didn't kind of get that. A lot of those guys, like JoJo, Stilley, that's a whole nother July discussion. Just the way the leadership structures of some of the Frost teams were built. But Stahl, in his mind, was as good or better than Austin Allen and Travis Vokalek. Well, guess who's playing for an NFC championship game?
Yeah, he plays
On an active roster. Jack Stahl.
Yeah.
So
I saw him give up a sack the other day.
I'm a big Vokalek fan. I'm a big Austin Allen fan. But, I think they've got potential at that position with Fedoni and Gilbert to be better.
Oh, Yeah, I think you're right. I mean,
Yeah,
Fedoni,
The potential
Sean,
is there. for
Sean, you
sure.
have some. I mean, you have some insight on Fedoni.
Oh, he looks
From
really
Niles
good.
Paul.
I mean, Niles
Mhm.
Paul, I was at and I had this in Tunnel Talk a week ago on our site. You know, Niles Paul was at the Warren Academy watching workouts and didn't know who Fedoni was. And he's like, damn, who is that guy? Like, he goes, he looks like George Kittle out there. I mean, the way he was running around, the way he moves at his size, and had no idea, you know, the story of Fedoni. So right now, Fedoni just in gym shorts looks as good as any tight end Nebraska's had in a long time.
Okay, interesting. Did you see it too?
I would no, it wasn't at that event.
Oh, okay.
Niles Paul goes up there. He's retired, and he
Okay.
helps Steve Warren coach. And you know, Zach Bowman helps Steve Warren too. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are from that era that come around and kind of get involved in the coaching.
Don't you think Fedoni might have done this right in terms of rehab and waiting and not thrusting himself back in there?
I think he wanted to play last year.
So
I mean,
somebody did it
according
right
to his
for him.
social media, he was
Oh.
not happy with the decision to shut him down. But I think the right decision was made. I mean, you got a guy that was coming off 2 significant knee injuries that, I mean, you got to make sure you're ready to go. You cannot afford another setback. Otherwise, your career might not ever get going. So I think that they made the cautious call. It was probably the detriment to not have a weapon like that available. But I think it was the right call just for the long term.
I do too.
What do you got next, Abby?
All right, we have a question from KT's Rob McCartney.
Oh,
It seems like there's nearly a nonstop cycle of news regarding commits, transfers, and people entering the portal. Does it change your job? Does it make it harder or hinder you? And can Husker fans kind of spin out of control trying to keep up with it all?
It's
Go ahead,
hard.
Sean.
It's a lot harder. I mean, it's gotten to the point over the last, and I knew it, like this 50-day stretch when the portal opened and to now, I knew it was going to be the most intense, like probably stretch we've ever dealt with, and it has been. And you know, it just comes down to a point where if you leave your house, you have to let people that you work with know that you're going to be gone, because if there's always been a chance that things can happen with breaking news, visits, whatnot. You bring your computer. I bring my computer everywhere I go now. I mean,
It's incredible.
like I have to sit, like, you know, when I'm at my daughter's tennis or at her swim practice, I'll be working on recruiting stuff when I'm at the pool or at the tennis courts watching her. I mean, you just can't right now, this time of year, you can't put it down. Like you have to keep being involved in it.
yeah. I mean, it's difficult in that regard. It's good. I mean, because it keeps interest flowing. Like there's no dull day in Nebraska
None.
football.
Not really.
So I mean, from a fan consumer standpoint, it's awesome. I mean, it's just like nonstop news, and you know, it's the transfer portal changed everything to where like basically every day signing day, where you know not just guys committing, but defections, movement, and all that sort of stuff. So that's a completely different off season. There is no off season.
And the company we work for really helps us. Like now
Yeah.
on 3, I mean, to have the portal resources that we have, the NIL things we have built into the company with support to do shows like we're doing right now and the graphics.
Oh, it's incredible.
I mean, it like that has made this fun because we can make this product look better for you because we have great things around us to do that. And that's why I've really enjoyed this. I've done this over 20 years. And I've never had all the things that we have. So it's kind of like a kid in Christmas, all these new toys that we have on 3 to bring it out. And it shows with our subscribers right now. It shows with our page views. It's been a lot of fun doing all this.
I don't know if it'll, Sean, I can't, we always battle on this. I don't know if it's every year it'll be like this.
Yeah, I think the coaching change added a whole different.
I think next year will be
element.
pretty wild still. There's going to be some cleanup stuff probably after year 1. But yeah, after year 1, you hope that it.
You're right, though. You knew this was going to be wild. It was probably a little more intense when I look back on it than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting Rhule to take 38 guys by February 1.
I wasn't expecting 50 below temperature either on signing day either. Go ahead, Abby.
All right, final question, Ab.
Okay, what is your favorite professional sport and your favorite sports team?
Well, okay. I say NFL. I love the Chiefs, but I'm a baseball guy in the summer. I love the Dodgers.
I say Dodgers for you.
I try to go to a road game. I was already thinking about that this summer if we can get to Colorado or somewhere to go watch them play a road game. But I love to sit outside on my porch, turn on the TV.
TV on the porch.
Yeah. Look at the fancy man.
Tax bracket.
Sit out there with a Coors Light, watch the Dodgers. In the Vince Scully era, you'd have Vince Scully on, sitting outside. It had the Traeger on, grilling.
Yeah. See, keep going.
I don't know if I've ever seen you wear team gear outside of
It's the only
Dodgers.
team gear I wear.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's easy for me.
He looks like a manager when he has a hat on.
I've got a
Doesn't wear a
McCook,
hat very
I've got a
often.
McCook Bison t-shirt I'll wear because
Okay.
my friend Jeff Gross, the coach there,
There you go.
gave me a old. So I'll have that, but you won't see me wearing any other team gear than Dodgers.
Rob,
Easy. New York Football Giants, NFL,
Boom.
all day, every day for the rest of my life. Better or worse, this was a fun season, a thud of an ending, but you know what? We got the right leadership. Dable. I say we because I'm a member of the team.
Yeah,
I've committed myself. I'm a part of this franchise.
safety. You'd be a safety.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you be a safety? Rob, hard hitting safety.
Holder.
A little slow.
Yeah.
A
Back
little
up.
white and slow.
Backup holder.
Back up.
No,
holder.
he'd be a safety. He's not a holder.
Actually, being a holder's pretty hard. I mean, that ball
It
fires
is.
back there.
And if you screw up, everybody knows about
Yeah.
it.
What do you got?
I don't
Sid?
have one. I
Oh,
try.
I was hoping.
try.
I was looking for this
It's about
answer.
the Raiders.
I mean, I try. I can't say that. I can't say. I can't name 4 players on the Raiders.
You
What
were a
about- what about
Dodgers
boxing?
fan.
I mean, I used to like it. I
You're a
tried to
boxing
get into
guy.
hockey. I kind of like the Tampa Bay Lightning and Nikita Kucherov. I got into the NHL playoffs like a lot of people do, and I did gravitate towards Tampa Bay, and I did gravitate towards Nikita Kucherov. If you're not a hockey fan, you don't understand, but he's the kind of player that right away you're like, ooh, whoa. I mean, the way he handles the puck, the way he skates, he's a freak. I mean, he's a freakazoid. He's like I'd compare him to a point guard that can score, like a high scoring point guard like Iverson. He was incredible to watch.
The hard thing about this job with Sundays is it's hard to watch NFL because I write on Sundays. I
Yeah.
work on Sundays, and you
Or
do
we're
too.
traveling,
I mean, traveling. So I love the Chiefs.
I find the time.
Yeah.
Robin will work
your steak
Saturday
out?
night till 2 a.m. to make sure he can watch the Giants game on Sunday.
I've missed a lot of NFL over the years because I've always worked.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to, and then you got your family too.
Yeah.
Like, so when I do have time on Sunday, I want to be with my family.
Yeah.
Abby, what's your favorite?
I'm a big Chiefs fan.
Woo!
Hey, you're
Oh,
a
yeah.
Chiefs fan?
Yeah.
Really?
I saw a video today of Patrick Mahomes running around at practice. He looked good. So
Did that look good?
he looked good. I'm excited.
Wonder what they did. I mean, they got to do something for that high ankle. You ever had a high ankle
Do
sprain?
you think he could feel
I
his
have
foot
not.
from the calf down at this point?
I don't know. That did not. It was not good.
You're in trouble,
last
Abby.
Saturday. He was.
Abby, you're in
limping
trouble.
around.
Well,
It was
then you got
rough.
Joey Burr coming to town.
Yeah.
I mean,
Joe
I'm
Shiesty?
a little scared of Joe Burrow. I got to be honest.
he's Mahomes'
Well, that's-
kryptonite.
The Chiefs never beat the Bengals.
Yikes! 3 times
I mean,
in a row.
they never
losing to them.
sacked
It's
Joe
not
Burrow.
great.
Zach Taylor just owns Kansas City.
Yeah, the Bengals have beaten the Chiefs 7 of the last 8 times. It's crazy if you think about it.
I've been having nightmares about them, honestly.
They looked really good at Buffalo. Really good, the Bengals.
Yeah.
We're getting them nervous. Sid.
All right, we come
I'm
back.
sweating.
Final segment of the show. The first mock draft came out. Break down who the names are, the Big Ten guys, and is Brian Ferentz leaving Iowa? We're gonna hit on all that next. You're listening to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Thanks again for joining us here. A reminder: you can download us on the Husker Online podcast channel. You can find us anywhere you locate podcasts. We're everywhere, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, you name it. Type Husker Online. You'll find our shows on there. Download, subscribe. Also, though, YouTube. Check us out. We've got a very fast-growing YouTube channel, pushing 40,000 followers on YouTube. So follow us there. We put the show on the YouTube stream. And check us out at HuskerOnline.com. We got a great special. $29.99 gets you access to our site all the way until August 31st. But gentlemen, let's close on the first mock draft. It came out this week. In Robin, it's a very mock draft right now. Mel Kiper 1.0 draft has Chicago obviously still in the 1 spot. I think most people assume that they could trade that pick with really anybody that needs a quarterback right now.
Yeah, and there's multiple teams that are desperate for quarterbacks. It's a pretty good quarterback draft class. And so right now he has him taking Jalen Carter, who very well could be the best overall football player in the draft, but the draft is often defined by needs. And so we'll see what they're able to do with that spot. And assuming that pick gets traded, it's going to shake up a lot of this. But first QB off the board is CJ Stroud from Ohio State. Sip, you've been able to see him over the years. Where do you think he stacks up as far as potential number 1 overall quarterback?
Oh, he looks like one, and I like him.
Is he in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's Bryce Young or Stroud. I love Bryce Young. He's probably my favorite college football player.
Bryce Young is 4th to the Colts.
I like him better than Young just because of size. Bryce Young a little concerning to me because he's little, and he's not super fast like the Arizona Cardinals quarterback. He's just little. I like him. I love him, and I think he'll be a great NFL player. But I'd take Stroud just size wise. What strikes me, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you guys something that really strikes me about this. Well, I saw something on TikTok the other day that floored me. Yeah. Easy.
Don't go there.
No, it's football. Okay. Okay. It was just a map of the U.S. Okay. And they drew a circle around where the states that have produced 16 of the last 17 national championship teams. Very small circle, by the way, right in the Southeast. Okay. Now look at the D linemen. The reason why these teams, not the only reason, but a lot of the reason Clemson and Georgia, Alabama, they keep winning is because that's where the D linemen are. And look at where these D linemen are. Jalen Carter, you just mentioned, from Apopka, Florida, Southeast. The guy in the 10th slot via Kuipers, a kid from Pittsburgh named Cansey. I can't say his first name, but his last name's Cansey. I think he's from Miami. You could double check that. The D lineman at number 19, Deion White from Georgia Tech, from North Carolina. That's where the look at every D lineman in this first round, and you'll see where they're from. Most of them are either from California or the Southeast. So how do you get them? How do you get them here? How do you get the first round talent to Nebraska?
NIL, transfer portal.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to get creative. And SIP, there's only 8 Big Ten guys in this 31 man mock draft. 8.
Is that you like that number 8 bigger?
The top 2 offensive linemen are from the Big Ten on this board right now. Peter Skoronsky from Northwestern is the number 1 lineman at number 7. And then the number 2 lineman is Paris Johnson from Ohio State. I believe, Robin, we had those guys 1 and 2 in the ranking the Big Ten series, which I was not a part of this year because I was on lockdown on
sabbatical
contract suspension.
Don't bring that up.
But we had those guys 1 and 2, right?
Yeah,
that's good. That's really good.
Speaking of D linemen, Big Ten D linemen, the first lineman on the mock draft, Lucas Van Ness from Iowa. He didn't start for Iowa. I mean, he played a bunch,
right,
but he never actually started a game.
He's from Illinois. Now he's not from the Southeast, so you can.
But
some of those guys are
talk about just like random postseason jumps up a draft board.
Yeah.
Iowa, it's no surprise that an Iowa lineman is in this conversation. They produced a lot of them, but the fact that he has making this jump to where he's a borderline top 10 pick.
Wasn't a starter.
It wasn't a starter.
How about from Illinois, SIP, Devon Witherspoon, the corner? They got him going number 14, and I'm assuming when Nebraska played them, he was the guy that locked down.
Oh, he was. Yeah, and remember the conversation.
He roughed Palmer up.
Yeah, that's what Mickey said that Illinois was really the first team that played him in such a physical manner, that played Palmer in such a physical manner.
He's the number 1 corner on the board right now on this draft board.
Now, Palmer will have to show NFL people that he can handle that. He's apparently showing them to a certain extent because you're seeing 3rd round draft grades already for Palmer.
Yeah, he made, literally Matt Rhule went on College Game Day, and then the next tweet was Trey Palmer's announcement that he went pro.
Yep, that's right.
It was that
day,
which no surprise.
Not really.
Yeah, I think that was his plan, regardless of who his Nebraska head coach was going to be.
You're listening here to the Husker Online show as we wrap up discussion. Are you guys on board with Will Levis as a top 5 pick?
He benefits from Josh Allen. I just think those NFL people see Will Levis becoming something like Josh Allen. He's big. Look how big he is. He's a physical runner like Josh Allen. Now, can he throw like Josh Allen? Not right now, I don't think. But maybe they see him becoming more and more like that.
And Robin, you watch a lot of pro football. Even those quarterbacks can get that 4th and 1, 3rd and 1 QB sneak. That's all of a sudden become a huge, valuable part of NFL football to QB sneak the 1 yard you need.
Which I don't know why that is like all of a sudden new. Like seems like the most simple play in football and weird. It's working when you just run the ball
Well,
forward.
you got to be like
a yard.
Mahomes is not doing it very much. You can't do it.
But that Trevor Lawrence does it. Blake Lawrence might at some point.
Big guy.
He played quarterback in high school.
Yeah, like Kyler Murray's probably not doing that much. He's
Right.
going to line up in shotgun and try to run around guys.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I remember that game where Will Levis was still at Penn State, and Sean Clifford got hurt, and they brought in Levis, and like they couldn't throw the ball, like, or at least didn't want to, and they just ran QB power for the entire game, and he was basically a running back out there.
He caught my eye. He did that day.
Parker Gabriel was questioning you at that point.
I was telling Parker, I think would verify this. I was saying, man, that guy Levis, and he's like, Sibley's not that good. I'm like, oh yeah, he can play. I should have probably been an NFL scout, maybe NFL coach.
He went in the portal, and I remember Nebraska when they were trying to get a quarterback to like compete against Adrian going into 2022.
Yeah,
or 2021. Excuse me, 2021. They followed him on Twitter when he went in the portal. But
he would have looked good at Nebraska.
But nobody was coming here.
He would have. He ran the ball like Frost used to run it. Can I say Frost on these airwaves? He ran the ball like that. He was a tough physical, like he was a very strapping runner. Tough.
All right,
run over guys.
Final thought: you think Brian Ferentz is heading to New England to join Bill O'Brien on that staff? Is that kind of his parachute out of Iowa City? Is this?
That's what Iowa guys were talking about back when Nebraska was playing Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they were saying. Those like the Iowa Riders.
And there's kind of a coordinator position on that New England staff below, like a title position. Mike Reese, the Patriots writer for ESPN, did mention that there's like a title position on that staff. So it would make sense for Brian Ferentz to fall into that. But does Bill Bel? I mean, I'm assuming Belichick would want Brian Ferentz. I don't know the parameters there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that's been, like you said, linked for a long time here. So it would make a natural out for Kirk to be able to replace his son without having to fire him and giving him Brian, I guess, what you would perceive as a step forward to take an NFL job. So I think it's a natural solution for problems. I question what that resume has done to earn an NFL job, but NFL ideas of coaching are a little different than they are in college.
Well, here's the other thing, Sip. I think Brian Ferentz at one point thought he would be the head coach of Iowa. I mean, that was 5 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Pre-weight room and all those things that happened there. He was the guy.
Yeah.
That ain't happening now.
No, probably not.
I mean, someone like Jay Norvell has a better chance to be the next Iowa coach than Brian Ferentz.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out Mark Stoops, Bob Stoops. I mean,
Bob Stoops would be pretty significant. Jay, I think Jay's got to do a little bit. He's got to do a little more in terms of wins and losses at Colorado State.
Iowa could add Bielema at one point too. I mean, there's a lot of guys Iowa could have had as their successor to Ferentz. And
I like the Norvell idea a lot. It makes a lot of sense. Hey, Bob Stoops, Sean. I mean, he's 60. I guess that's not too bad, but I don't know.
How the hell is he 60?
You think he should be
42?
Yeah. I don't know. I always wonder about Stoops. Like I wondered if Harbaugh would have left for the NFL, which he's staying at Michigan. If he would have left, would Bob been in that conversation? I don't know. I don't know what Bob wants to do, but man, he looked good at Michigan.
Well, I think that Michigan job, a lot of people would come out of the woodwork for if it opened. I mean, there'd be.
Well, I don't know, Sean. Like that's a strange job, and it's got to be the right type of guy, or right type of fit. There's certain guys like Rich Rod that didn't fit, and I don't think they'd go that way again. Like a spread offense guy, offense.
Brady Hoke was kind of too boring for the job.
He fit though.
He fit, but he just didn't bring
win.
A lot of pop.
No, he fit, but he didn't win.
Yeah, now how much the bar has been raised there too.
Oh.
I mean, they expect national championships.
Well, playoff now, 12-team playoff. They got to be in the playoff 4 out of 5 years.
Well,
so
Harbaugh,
the pressure is much more than it was when Jim Harbaugh took over.
Well, now it's the pressure to win a national championship.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's good pressure. He's got his quarterback back. He's got Blake Corum back. He's got a lot back. So yeah, I mean, he came back And now the expectation will be win a national championship.
All right. Well, make sure you follow us on Husker Online. Once again, download, subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to us as well on YouTube, and make sure you're on HuskerOnline.com as we get you ready for National Signing Day next week.